prefabrication and the advantages of full team coordination meetings in prefabrication projects. So my name is Brad Pineau. I'm an architect at Perkins and Will. I'm joined in spirit by Joe Nault, Claudia, and also Sam Shepard from Isgenuity. So between our group, we had two on the construction side and two on the architecture side. What I'm going to be speaking about today is, and sort of the purpose of what we wrote about was sort of looking at the history and processes of prefabrication, and sort of diving a little bit deeper into sort of how that full team coordination has evolved over time. And then we sort of also looked at both kind of the opportunities that are there, but also sort of some of the drawbacks that are there. And then additionally, we wanted to share some case studies, as a few of us in the group have been involved in prefabrication on a first-hand basis. So looking quickly at the history and the process identification, as we like to think of it, you know, prefabrication has a really great opportunity to streamline the construction process for many reasons. However, it's not perfect, and modular does not necessarily mean prefab. And I think that was a huge takeaway for us, that it's not always about perfect rectangles sort of fitting into Tetris style designs. Rather, these can be very complex, and oftentimes going for a complex design, it might be really advantageous for many reasons to have a prefabricated execution strategy. And then also looking into the past, it hasn't always guaranteed efficiency. I think it's an automatic thing for everybody to say, oh, prefab, like that's going to be quicker, easier, et cetera, et cetera. And it might be, but it hasn't always been. So kind of moving into some of these methods and maybe where we are today, what we've been noticing and seeing in the industry is that there's actually, through the use of advanced technology, there's quite a bit of availability for our different sectors to sort of overlap. So really starting at the beginning, looking at the schedule and sort of getting the owner and the client sort of on that mentality with you about, how we can make this project more streamlined, will sort of ease that transition for the whole team to be able to exercise some of this more kind of new way of thinking about prefabrication. And then of course there's, then we're sort of moving into what some of us might know of traditionally as the design phase, which can be explored more with more shareholders. So in other words, it's not just the architects coming with the design, rather it could be an opportunity for the contractors to give their input about maybe how certain elements of the design might be delivered, how it might be fabricated, etc., so that it allows maybe the design team to react and be able to design that type of thing into the project. As you move into fabrication, I think we might all know that sort of working under controlled environments really gives an opportunity for a more safe, a more precise, and just kind of an overall a better end product, which then should, in theory, if it's all working well, lead to a more logistically sound and much more streamlined installation in the field. So as I just mentioned, it doesn't always have to be a box. It can be very complex. However, and it doesn't always have to be facade. It doesn't, there's many different ways that we can prefabricate different items on a building. We're looking at some mechanical and scaffolding and piping here being hoisted into place. But in probably all of these cases, we're again coming back to this opportunity of having a controlled environment to work with. I think everybody knows it's been raining like every day this summer, which that would alleviate a lot of these problems, which can then influence the cost and the savings on the job, um, which then can also then be realized again with the express installation and overall more streamlined process. So some of the flaws about this process is that it is still, these projects are typically complicated and there are still many voices on the team. So now we're sort of making the team bigger. And so we have more voices, we have more complications, we have a lot more to figure out as part of this design process. So this could require determining early on in the process who makes the decisions, and really being sort of rigid about that, so to avoid sort of roadblocks along the way. So lastly, what we really wanted to emphasize was a couple of case studies. Joe is not here to speak about it, but I will try to help. And then I've also provided one of the high schools that we're doing as well. So this is a look at 50 Rogers Street. And this is a high-rise 136 unit apartment mixed-use building. So anybody that might have worked on a project like this, there's lots of repetition. There's usually a very common core space where you need to run lots of plumbing and mechanical, and so on a large scale, that becomes a really sensitive topic, because any delays are going to affect cost, and it's usually very repetitive work. So the easiest way to get that executed is to have something kind of in place and make everything the same. So I know that what Joe was working on in his job was the shell of this shower enclosure was such that they were able to literally drop these units in place, let the plumbing kind of be hooked up, and then they bring everything else around it. So what it allowed them to do was to streamline their coordination process, and then also sort of streamline that install, so that this particular team that is touching many different contractors, plumbers, tilers, flooring, wall framing, all this, it's just making this whole thing much easier to build. And as you can see from these photos, it's a really nice end product. So this would be maybe a success of prefabrication. First, I've mentioned to a few of us that working on Stoneham High School, it's one of the jobs we're actively working on now, where we really we have a very expressive structure in the building. So as part of our design process, we're sort of working with with a bunch of these red dots that you see in this diagram. Is our kind of our tree path, and we have this concept about path and promontory. There's a very kind of kickback to nature that we're sort of striving for in this job. So what that's kind of led us to over the course of the design process is, we're sort of looking at these columns, not just vertically, but we've put an angle on them. So there's sort of a through the forest type of effect that's going on, as you can kind of see in this diagram, as you come into the building and you experience these sort of main spaces. As we started to get into the details, we sort of recognized that we needed to really start to account for the function of like how the flooring was going to come together, and also how we were going to like tilt these columns into place. We didn't want the contractors to be we didn't want to have a bunch of columns tilting in different directions. We wanted to really be controlling of how that pattern was laying out. So we started to work through these details to both sort of handle the function as well as sort of control the angle of the column. So where that ended up leading us was to a place where we said, well, we could use that detail to sort of help prefabricate these members, and maybe that could be something that would both allow us to get sort of what we want on the design end, but also help that contractor sort of come to site with deliveries and also ultimately execute this thing in the field rather than a stick built. So what we did was we were working with Consigli on this project, and is sort of very simple. We had some draft renderings. We had some Bluebeam elevations of some ideas, and we literally worked through this in sequencing, talking about logistics. We're sort of using some of these details to help us control the angle of these columns. And we sort of were able to determine how wide they might be so that they could travel to the site appropriately, and how long and all that kind of thing. We do a lot of file subbid work in Massachusetts, so we don't really have full control over how they're going to do this. So it was really a conversation with the CM about trying to strategize, put forward a sort of lay the groundwork, I suppose you might say, rather than specifically telling them, hey, we're gonna prefabricate this thing. When we got to shop drawings, we were really surprised. Actually, if you go back to here, we had planned for this to be in two pieces, the green and the red. And when we get to shops, they actually were ended up putting this whole thing together, which was really exciting. Both that our plan sort of worked, but also that they were even taking it a step further. I got some photos here of them bringing these pieces to site. And then this is for our main gym space, which you saw in the previous rendering, and what they're able to do. Let me just do this real quick. So you can kind of see them swinging this thing off the truck into place pretty quick, and only requiring a couple of guys. Then, the crane is sort of lifting this thing up swinging into place, and just taking two guys at the base and maybe another guy up top. They put the bolts on, and then they're able to take these splice plates and sort of nail it all together. So all in all, this gym was able to really just work themselves out, and we built the whole thing in probably 3 days. So it was a great experience for Consigli, and I think for us as well, to sort of have this unfold. So in conclusion, I think we think that after going back through this, that we think that prefabrication is a great and sort of very useful tool that can be used on projects. Although we do recognize that there are a lot of potential, I don't want to call them flaws, but I think I might just say that there's a potential for like it needing to be the right type of job and maybe the right type of opportunity for prefabrication. However, if that opportunity is there, I think that as we move forward as an industry, we should really be looking to move forward with these types of planning, because it really does make things a lot more streamlined in the field. So thank you very much.